Okay, first Q&A of the year, which is going to be a year of fewer Q&As because we won't have our weekly Q&A anymore. So, yeah.
What is an Eis Ratzon?
What is an Eis Ratzon? It's a good question. What is an Eis Ratzon? Do you have a particular? I know we use the phrase, but do you have a particular instance of it that you're thinking of that we can like work with that?
Yeah, at first Mila, as the baby's crying.
Right.
Sometimes you know how
Right.
it's like it's a
Yeah.
Eis Ratzon.
You know what? First thing, for my first question, I don't know the answer, but my first question, let me share the screen, is whether that phrase comes from Tanakh. For all I know, it might. So let me just do a quick search here.
There's one in Tehillim.
There's one? What?
There's one in Tehillim.
Oh, yeah?
Eis Ratzon.
Let's see here. I'll tell you, let me give you my answer, what I would have to guess. I mean, obviously, the answer is not magical, mystical, baby cry makes, if I had to guess, is that our ability to, they usually say it in terms of like tefillah stuff, right? So my guess would be that your tefillos can be affected by your state of mind, and any additional circumstantial clarity that you get is going to be a boost for your tefillah. So let's say, for example, when you're reflecting on, when you're at a bris milah and the baby is crying, I mean, being at a bris milah itself might be this, but when you hear the baby crying for entering into the bris, like the actual procedure, it affects you in like a visceral way. And then when they say, you kind of and you have this moment of like, thinking about the continuity of the chain of the avos and us, or if you're in my situation, you think about when you went into the bris, like voluntarily, it's a very powerful moment, and that could have an effect on your tefillos. That's what I would think it means. Let's see here. Tehillim, Eis Ratzon. Oh yeah, you're right. 69. It's not one. I feel like we don't say this parak, right? But we do say that phrase. Yeah, I don't recognize this parak. Let's just see really quickly what some of my go-to mafarshim say on it, and then we can see. Oh, well, now when I go to mafarshim, it's a sforno. Eis Ratzon shu ata b'terem. Nope, it doesn't explain. And then Rav Elia Denola. There's another go-to. Eis Ratzon shahari tfilos Yisrael begalus lo tihena be'eis Ratzon she'ena mispalim lashem belev shalem meirov tzarosehem. Interesting. So he's saying the tefillos of Yisrael in Galus will not be Be'ez Ratzon because they're not being mispala to Hashem with a whole heart out of the abundance of their tsaros. Lefikach ani mispala ata alehem shu Eis Ratzon. I mean, I don't know the context of the parak. I mean, you would think that when we are in tsaros, then that would be a greater Eis Ratzon. But I guess he's concerned that the Jews will not turn to Hashem in that time. Again, I'm very wary of taking these things out of context, but I'm just looking. I'm going to do two more. Radak says, Amar Eis Ratzon Klomer Ani Tfilasi Lecha Tamid Ula Yihye Ba'achas Eis Ratzon Li Shetakabel Es Tfilasi Lahotzinim Minagalas. Okay, so that sounds different than what I said, right? That sounds like he's saying I'm going to do the scattershot approach. I'm going to be mispala constantly because maybe one of those times will be an Eis Ratzon, right? So I was answering from the mispalo to God direction. I can see there being an idea of Eis Ratzon from the God to the mispalo direction, in the sense that God is outside of time, but hashgacha has to work in time, right? There has to be when God intervenes in the laws of nature are operating, right? That was I can't remember if we learned this parak in full, but I'm just going to advertise it right now. 93. Hashem Malach Geus Lavesh. The Malbim. I feel like we did this in Tehillim Shir once. Malbim says, let's see if I can remember the pshat without looking at the Malbim. Hashem Malach, Hashem has reigned. Geus Lavesh. He dawns grandeur. Lavesh ad Hashem Oz Hisazar. Hashem girds himself with strength. Af Tikon Tevil Baltimot, and yet he doesn't allow the earth to falter. So I believe the Malbim said that dawning. Okay, I'm gonna guess. Hold on a second. I'm not gonna read the whole Malbim because it was a long Malbim, but I think this is an important idea here. Gava, yeah. So Gava, he says, is violating the laws of nature, and then the Oz that he girds himself with is the laws of nature, and he says that the the shevach to God is not in the fact that, I mean, obviously you can praise God for doing miracles and you can praise God for nature, but he says the amazing thing is the fact that God is able to intervene in the laws of nature in a way that doesn't throw off the entirety of nature itself, that he dons grandeur while being girded with strength, meaning he intervenes in nature while maintaining the natural order, and the earth doesn't falter, and if you I'm sure if I were a computer programmer, I could come up with a good muscle, but with my layman's knowledge of computer programming, you can't just go in and change something without and say, oh, nothing else will change. Like it's everything is interconnected, So I know that much, so I can see there being a thing where like God can't, so to speak, intervene in nature at every time equally, right? Because that, if you said that, that would be a denial of Chachmas Hashem in the universe, right? That'd be saying that there is no such thing as the laws of nature. So maybe that is the other idea of Eis Ratzon, that does not sound like Bris Milah Eis Ratzon, but that you have to be constantly mispalel, because if God is going to intervene, he, so to speak, can't intervene equally at any moment. It has to be at a time where all of the factors are going to be, able to bring about all the results that need to be brought about, and that's actually a good, like, I can't say Musar Haskel, Tefillah Haskel, Maskil David. It's a good Maskil David. That, like, I think especially nowadays when we're in an Esara, I think people kind of despair when they are being mispalel and then not seeing results. I know that's a very infantile, emotion, but people are operating in infantile mode of tefillah. But the idea is that, I think this idea is really good, is that you should be mispalel all the time, because there is a, let me quote Koheles and hope that the quote actually, Lakolzman the Eis Lakol Chepetz Takas Hashemayim, right? So that's the opening of the times parak. There is a time for everything. There is a season, and there's a time for every desire under the sun. But then he says at the end, Es Hakol Asa Yafa V'ito. God made everything beautiful in its time. Okay, right? Now he's referring to a Kohelesi idea, but I would say al derech drush that, like, God doesn't just do stuff haphazardly. So when you ask for stuff, even if it is a good thing to ask for you to demand that he do this now is not only impossible, but it's foolish, because what you should ask for is for God to do this at the right time, and so that might be another idea of Eis Ratzon. I can't see that that's connected to Mila, right? Like, I think the idea that I gave for Mila, or for Eis Ratzon by Mila, fits better, but this is a good Eis Ratzon in general, right? That's good idea. Yeah.
Do you think any significance to this, all that's happening right now, coming a mere 3.5 years after the COVID outbreak and all the some things that happened then?
Interesting.
Or like that these two things are coming in seemingly in fairly relatively close proximity to each other.
Interesting. Well, let me just repeat something that I said last night, because I think it's relevant to answering your question, which is I quoted, Chaim Gerson reminded me of something that I quoted from Rabbi Zucker, who was quoting the Rav, and I don't know where the Rav says this, but the Rav said that there are, when people always want to know, why do things happen, or why is God doing this, or so he says that there's two words for why in Hebrew. There's madua and then there's lama, and those are two, both you translate them as why, but those are two different questions. Madua comes from the shorish of yud dalet ayin, yada, knowledge, and madua is asking what was the cause of this effect. Okay, that is something that we cannot know unless we have nevuah, right, about like what God does. But lama means ma, for what, which means that what are we going to do in response to this, right? What are we going to do about this now that this has happened? So in terms of the Madua question, I can't answer, right, about like if there's anything in terms of the cause of COVID and this. But I can definitely say that a lama response is warranted. In other words, like, what do you think of a specific thing about COVID? Because I have my own association.
Okay, I mean, my thought was just knowing a lot of the reaction of, this being Itzara, and this being like definitely an impetus for teshuvah, and
Yeah,
like reason to look into ourselves. What are we not overall not thinking correctly?
Yeah.
Doing wrong? And now I've just gotten like a lot of discussion and hearing like people their thoughts on this.
Yeah.
It seems to have like a very similar feel. So they seem similar to me.
Yeah.
Insofar as like a very evident, clear wake up call, like a smack in the face type of wake up call.
Yeah.
But
okay, so I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and I think it does actually fit into COVID. I was talking with someone last night, and I'm not going to quote him, even though he's the source of the idea, because I'm not sure that he wants to be quoted. But what have you heard people say? I'm not saying that you validate this but what have you heard people say about the timing? What do people focus on about the timing of these attacks? Okay, that's one thing. Young people were 50 years. That's definitely a significant thing. Yeah.
It's like a rejection of God to us. Is right after Shana album.
Interesting. Okay, I had not heard that one before. That is that I can definitely hear that being a thing. Yeah, Simchas Torah. I feel like I've heard Simchas Torah the most, or Yom Tov. The thing I had not heard until last night from this person is he said that we had a holiday that was literally about taking security in God and not taking security in our material prosperity and strength and might of our own hand. And the day after that holiday, right, the Shmini Atzeres, when we go back in, and the idea being, again, I heard this from Esti, who I think was quoting Rebbe, of the cycle of the, you have two cycles of the Moadim. You have the Regalim, and then you have the Moedei Chodesh HaShvi'i, right? And those two different cycles with two different like focuses, foci. I forgot how you say that word. The Regalim have agricultural theme. There's Rabbi Zucker says that the Regalim have there's a Hashgacha Klalos theme and Hashgacha Pratis theme. The Hashgacha Klalos theme is Chodesh Aviv, the month of blossoming, and then Chag HaKatzir, the beginning of the harvest, then Chag HaAsiv in the ingathering of the harvest. And then the Hashgacha Pratis themes obviously are Yetzias Mitzrayim, Matan Torah, and then the Ananei HaKavod in the Midbar. And then you have the Modeh Chodesh HaShvi'i, which is its own cycle, which is Rosh Hashanah with Malchus, Zikaronos, and Shofros, which reorients you to the fundamentals of reality and man's relationship with God, followed by kicking off the Aseret Mei Teshuvah, where you're involving yourself in drawing close to Hashem through Teshuvah, and then Yom Kippurim, where you get Kapara, and then the Sukkos with focusing on our dependence on God in general, and the circling of the Mizbeach on Hashem, Hoshiana, and then it culminates. This is the idea that I heard from your mom from Rebbe, is that Shmini Atzeres is a Yom Tov without mitzvos, right? So you are, after going through these two cycles of Moadim, ideally you emerge as a transformed person where you can now live one day Lifnei Hashem, before falling back into the human cycles of like going back, into the winter of literal and the winter of like human perfection. So like, this person told me that like there is something to be said for the fact that we went through a Chag focused for 7 days on taking security in God, and a Chag HaAsif of anti-Kochi v'otem yadi, and then we get this wake up call from that, and which forces us to reflect on who were we taking our security in and who were we attributing our might to. So again, I'm not saying that in a causal way. I'm saying that in an effectual way of that this should cause us to reflect on our security. And then if I were to draw a comparison to COVID, I would say that was perhaps the biggest shaking of our security and our feeling of invincibility. And so I think you should, if you're having those associations to COVID, you should tap into those feelings and memories and utilize them in the tshuva that you do today. Some of us who you have, who either keep like some form of a journal or have, social media, right? Like I have Facebook, and Facebook has, every day I check my Facebook memories of what I was posting about, and I have lots of stuff that was going on from that time that I can like put myself in that mindset. So yeah, it's a good question. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I have to just take notes on this because I know I'm going to forget. So the first question was about Eis Ratzon. I'm just taking notes here. Eis Ratzon, and then the second was about COVID and war. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So us being in America, there's not much we can do. And with everything going on, with our lives that we live, how do we like balance the
Balance the tzara.
Sorry, I'm just in the throat.
Sure.
Balance the sorrow with our daily activities.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to challenge your first statement about there's not much we can do. I think that if we were in, let's say 100 years ago, 150 years ago, maybe 100 years ago, definitely, but definitely 150 years ago, there would be nothing we can do, like virtually nothing we can do. You know, we are in a position where we can do, I mean, I'd say we can do as much, maybe more than many Israelis could do. I mean, we can't fight on the ground, but I mean, we are in a world where you can push a button and have resources, you know, delivered to where they need to go. So I would say that look for all the ways that you can do stuff, you know, and I think there's a lot more that you can do. And I had that, I don't know if you saw in my my content group, the post that I had of like, you know, words. Every one of us has words that you can tell people who are, if you have a public platform like I do, or if you have a, you know, public, I mean, you know, each of us has a, you know, you know, some platform of people outside of our immediate circle, but then even people who are your friends and family that you can check in on. You know, I saw another thing that, where did I post this? Hold on. This was a post by Rabbi Yoni Rosenzweig. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want to pull a phrase from it. That, oops, not that. For those who don't know, I don't know which institution Rabbi Yoni Rosenzweig is affiliated with, but he's the one who has spearheaded a lot of mental health halacha initiatives. He's doing a lot of good, and so he's answering a lot of shilas right now about that kind of thing. Oh, so he was talking to his daughter who felt helpless, and he said that, hold on. Yeah, so he was talking to his daughter, and he said to her, he says, every time you, daughter, talk to your boyfriend on the phone, every time you send one of your friends a message to see how they're doing, every time you send a care package to a soldier, you connect them back to normalcy, to stability, to routine, and they need that. They need to balance out the insanity they live with daily with the love and warmth and comfort of hearth and home. And he was talking about how, like, just how traumatic it is for the soldiers and for the people in Israel. So even something that is just like a normal interaction. I mean, I even see people, you know, people feel very awkward on social media posting jokes and humor. You know, they feel like it's inappropriate. I don't think it's I mean, there's definitely inappropriate ways to do it, but like, I think that it is not inappropriate to give people something to smile about and to, like, you know, to connect with, you know, in that way. Or I'll give you a, you know, I'll give you a Mishlei idea. I'm sure I've quoted this before. I don't think we've learned it. There is a pasuk that says, hold on. Okay, this is Mishlei 25:25, easy to remember. Mayim karim al nefesh ayefa ushmua tova me'eretz merchak. Like cold water on a weary soul, so is good news from a far off land. Okay, so again, this is not Mishlei here, so we're not going to analyze it together. But the idea that I came up with is, you know, the main questions are, first of all, like, how does cold water on a weary soul help? I mean, if you assume the weariness of the soul is from like your psychological anguish or your hard work, whatever, how does that help? And then why good news from a far off land? Okay, so the idea that my shot on this, I can't remember if Rabbi Moskowitz and I came with this together. It's hard to remember, but we've all had the experience that this cold water thing works, right? You come home after like a hard day at school or at work. Sometimes just splashing your face with water can refresh you. So how does that work? It's not just a physical sensation. I think the subject of the pasuk is, this is Mishlei's attitude towards the proper use of escapism, okay? Which is that when you splash cold water on your face, it doesn't actually change the stresses that you've dealt with or the stresses that you're going into, but it provides a momentary escape from the immediacy of the stresses that you're facing right now, okay? And that's why it's specifically good news from a far off land, because when you hear good news from close, that definitely makes you feel good as well. However, you're hearing it in the context of the entire like life that you have, that you're living, and that the person who has the news is living. So an example, like let's say you hear that let's say someone in your community has a baby, right? And let's say like the struggles that they're dealing with, and like maybe they struggle to like get pregnant in the first place, or or let's say like there's financial struggles, or like you hear it in the context of everything else. But when you hear that like some like friend who you're not really connected with, like had a baby, and you don't know any of the details, it's just pure good news, and you just like momentarily like escape into that, like, that's really nice, just like feel the really nice thing. I feel like that's the kind of relief that you can provide for. Oh, sorry, and I'll say just one second as well, is that this is not limited to cold water on the face. I think when for some people it's listening to music, for some people it's like taking a shower, some people it's like going on a jog. I think there are these things you can do that don't actually change your problems or solve your problems, and they don't even change something going forward, but the momentary reprieve can give you like a charge of like like can refresh you in a way that does make you more fit to like face life. And I think that you providing that kind of relief or support for people in the heart of the Eis Tzara can be good for them. So that's even if you can't send resources, but you can definitely send resources. And I'll just to repeat something that I gave in my Sunday shiur last year on Erev Rosh Hashanah about Rabbi Kiva's strategy for having a good din. The main idea there, according to the Rambam, was that the many small acts of tzedakah and chesed are going to be better than one large act of tzedakah and chesed. Not in terms of the effect on the world, because that's going to be the same, but the effect on you. And the example he gives is like, if you have a choice between giving $1,000 in one shot versus, giving $100 in 10 different shots, to 10 separate acts of tzedakah, the 10 acts will perfect you more, because what you're doing is you're giving yourself more opportunities to be boker batov in that action. So I think, I don't know what everyone's financial situation is, but like, I'm definitely feeling a pressure to like give lots of money, and I think that can be good, but it can also be irrational. Like we don't just like, you don't just give up all, because I'll put caps on how much you give, so I think we're in for the long haul, and I think that if you give tzedakah, this is my advice, if you give tzedakah, then there's a temptation to give like one huge amount. But what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up like either pressuring yourself to give more than you should give, or you're going to end up pressuring yourself to give more than you give and then not giving anything. So I think what you should do is, if you have a certain amount of tzedakah money that you've allocated, give it in smaller doses to different organizations or every day. And for your own both perfection from the Rambam's perspective, and also in terms of your feeling like you're doing something, then I think that would be a good thing to do. And I think when I think there's a false counter argument. You could say, well, why should I delay giving help? Like I should give help now. Well, they're going to need help. There's going to be new needs, like as the days are going on. Like I don't think it's necessarily reasonable to say like everyone has to give everything right now. Like that's just not good. So I think those are some things you could do.
The second question.
That was your second question. How do you balance? I'm saying that by involving yourself in.
I was more asking. I was asking a little something different.
What was the question?
The question was like let's say like I'm working.
Yeah.
And I'm on Facebook.
Yeah.
I have to make a post about work, but at the same time, I feel stupid to post about work when I could be posting something about.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a good question. So you're saying
yeah, like finding that balance of like, like being sensitive to the world,
right,
versus like
it's a good question. That's is something to struggle with as well. I have to think about that one some more. What I would say is that as a general guiding principle is you have to live your life, right? And you living your life and doing whatever role that you have in in the world, even if it's for work, because you have to earn a livelihood, that is like let me give if someone said how can I shower and brush my teeth when there's stuff going on in the world, you'd say don't be an idiot. Like you have to shower and you have to brush your teeth, right? Those are needs, right? So like the tending to needs is not a stira to the fact that there are other urgent needs going on. So I think like keeping in that practical framework, is good. And I think that the warning signs are if you feel yourself being drawn into your daily activities to a point where you are like losing focus of the fact that we're in a Sarah, then that would be something to like, then you turn the dials, you know? Yeah.
So, well, I'll have a question like the thing I referred to with the Shana Rabbah,
Yeah.
that, so it does feel almost, like there's a famous martial that if it rains the person is like, it's equivalent to God, like taking wine, like spilling the serpent's.
Right. In Eretz Israel.
Right,
Yeah, right. Not in Seattle. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's gonna rain, it's a bad sign. No,
Yeah,
it's
right.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
But when it comes to like what just happened, like isn't that even more? Because the whole idea of Shana Rabbah, we see all those Shanos.
Mhm.
Until like the last day of like the final sealment of the judgment for the year.
Yeah.
When this happens right after, like why? How could we? There's been a big push to for like to instill happiness.
Yeah.
Like you see people dancing as soldiers, but why isn't it more mourning? Why isn't it more like we are? There's something wrong that we're doing. Yeah.
Right. I mean, there should be. That's why we were fasting today, right? I mean,
Wow.
you know, and that's why I'm not going to repeat the whole thing, but I last night I started my Talmud shiur with a 25-minute shiur, sorry, 33-minute shiur on no 25-minute shiur on why a disagreement I got into with another educator. I said that we should be teaching the Rambam Hilchos Tinios, which says that the only reason why things like this happen is because of our chatayim, you know, and we need to do tshuva. And this other educator was saying, no, that's the wrong message to give right now. And my response is, no, this is exactly the message that the Torah says we give now. That is literally the mitzvah of sounding the trumpets and crying out to God in tefillah and doing tshuva at Eis Ratzon. You know, so I think that is the response that we should have. And I think the simcha is important for the soldiers. I think boosting morale for them is good, but I think that the simcha, I think the people who are like, you know, I think there's a bad kind of escapism of simcha that can happen for other people.
Right.
That's not good. You know, that's distracting yourself from your problems. And I think that a lot of this is fueled by it is not fashionable to blame the victim, but that's what we hold, right? We hold that God is just, and we hold that things don't happen that are sorrows to Klal Yisrael unless we deserve them, you know. So I think that it's and again, this is not to say that individual people who died had individual liability, because there's a principle in Chazal, given shinitna rishus lamashchis eno mavchim min tzaddik l'rasha, that once God unleashes the destructive force, it doesn't differentiate between tzaddik and rasha, right? So it's not like if, you know, this person died in the in a terrorist attack, then they deserve to die at that moment because of their particular sins. Like, obviously everything is just, but it doesn't. This is a decree on the nation, you know, and because it's in Eretz Israel, it's a decree on the entire Jewish people. Like, it's not just the communities that were struck. Like, this is on the entire Jewish people. So we all have to do tshuva, and that's why we're fasting today. You know, yeah. Okay. Hold on a second. Simcha versus mourning. Note to myself. Yeah, Sean.
Yeah, I would pause the.
Okay.
first one.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Yes, Doug.
Okay, so, Isaac has asked the question.
Oh, sorry, Isaac. Yeah.
Hey, so what's the point of fasting?
The point of fasting in general.
Yeah, I'd say, like, let's say, you know, I feel like other than like Yom Kippur,
Yeah.
I feel like, it's often just like I just don't eat, you know,
Right.
like it doesn't specifically move me towards tshuva.
Right.
And I know that it should, you know, but it's just I find that it doesn't have that effect.
Okay. Yeah. So there are many ideas of fasting. The one that I find the most moving is actually, this might be two ideas. Only one of them I wrote about. I can send this in the discussion chat. Hold on. This is the only article about fasting I've written, which is no. Yeah. Fasting as literal self-sacrifice. So the kitzer, the idea is, this is there's this idea that I'm just going to read the Abravanel. He says that so he's talking about Yom Kippurim, but I think this is true for all days. He says the Kabbalists mentioned, I'm not sure who he's referring to, that there are metaphysical forces above which consume the korban when the miraculous fire descends upon the mizbeach. Corresponding to these forces, below are the limbs of man, which consume his fat and blood by means of the vital heat within him. That's outdated physiology. Therefore, they commanded that on a day of tinus, a person should focus his spirit and soul as if he were a mizbach kapara, on which his own fat and blood are burned from his own vital heat within him in service of his creator. They instituted a practice, and I think this is in the Siddur, that a person should say during his fast, Ribon Haolamim, is revealed and known before you that during the time when the Beis Mikdash stood, a man would sin and bring a korban, and he would only offer its fat and blood, and it would atone for him. And now I have sat in my tinus, and my own fat and blood have been diminished. May be your will that the diminution of my fat and blood be as if I offered it before you on the Mizbeach, and you favored me. So to me, I was bothered by that idea. So read the article for explanation of that. That's one idea, okay, but I'm not going to paraphrase that. The other idea is, I think that fasting puts you into a state of weakness and fatigue and makes you realize your dependency on God, and it makes you, we go about as though we are independent causes of our own existence, like we take for granted the fact that you can get up and move and do your activities and have energy. And all it takes is 24 hours, for some people less, of not eating, and you feel weak, and you have this primal knowledge that if you continue fasting, you will die in a couple of days, so it makes you realize your utter dependency on God. And that what that should do is, in addition to all the other things that makes you realize, it should move you to do tshuva, because I'm only being granted existence because because God is allowing me to through his Ratzon. So to what extent am I fulfilling his Ratzon? Like if to give a crude analogy here, if you had a doctor who was keeping you alive on life support, and he said, could you do me a favor and pass me that box of tissue? And you're like, no. That's just like, like what kind of person are you? Someone is keeping you alive and you're not, doing what they ask, So I think that is the link into doing teshuvah here. A third idea, which I'll say really quickly, I'm calling you Sean, is Rabbeinu Bachya ben Asher in the Kada Kemach under the Tinus entry. For those who don't know Kada Kemach, very underrated work. It's an alphabetical set of essays on various hashkafa topics by Rabbeinu Bachya. And so in the one on tinus, he says that the idea of a tinus is that you are making real to you the fact that the essence of you is your Tzelem Elokim and not your animalistic, your Nefesh HaBahami. And you are doing that as an aid to doing tshuva, to recognizing that the thing that should be in control here is your Tzelem Elokim. And that's another route to doing tshuva. But I like this Abravanel idea, which you can read, and the idea of the dependency on God. Yeah, Sean?
Yeah, in addition to the second idea that you
there's
said,
the fourth one, yeah.
I think also experientially,
Yeah.
depending on how good of a faster you are.
Yeah.
Through talking to one of my friends who is a very poor faster.
Yeah.
I think there's this anxiety of, am I going to make it through the fast?
Yeah,
and
right.
There's also, if you see that as an expression of, am I going to make it through this, and tying that back to the ideas of insecurity and not knowing the certain.
That's a good question. Yeah. That's a good
very
point.
Experientially, I think it also lends itself very much to that.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. Right. Is of thinking about other threats to your survival. The fifth idea then is, I thought I wrote about this, maybe I didn't. Is the whole we'll end with this. I think I have. Hold on a second. I'm trying to see where I quote Yeshayahu here. In Yeshayahu chapter 55, I think. He says, this is the Haftarah of Yom Kippurim. I think it's 55. So cry out. This is a good thing to end on today. Cry out vociferously. Do not restrain yourself. Raise your voice like a shofar. Proclaim to my people their willful sins, to the house of Jacob their transgressions. They pretend to seek me every day and desire to know my ways, like a nation that acts righteously and has not forsaken the justice of its God. They inquire of me about the laws of justice, as if they desire the nearness of God, asking, why did we fast and you did not see? Why did we afflict ourselves and you did not know? Behold, on your fast day you seek out personal gain and you extort all your debts. Because you fast for grievance and strife, oops, I was supposed to say to strike each other with a wicked fist. You do not fast as befits this day to make your voice heard above. Can such be a fast I choose, a day when man merely afflicts himself? Can it be merely bowing one's head like a bulrush and spreading sackcloth and ashes? Here's the answer. Surely this is the fast I choose, to break open the shackles of wickedness, to undo the bonds of justice, and to let the oppressed go free and to annul all perversion. Surely you should break your bread for the hungry and bring the moaning poor to your home. When you see a naked person, clothe him, and do not hide yourself from your kin. So putting yourself in a state, the only kind of fast that God listens to is a fast that leads to doing chesed, mishpat, and tzedakah. So you should be giving tzedakah to people who are in need. But the idiotic thing about human beings is we don't really acknowledge other people with need unless we ourselves feel the need, So what you're doing is you're putting yourself in a state of visceral need, and that should motivate you to then say, oh, there are other people who have needs. The thing I think to myself is I get to break this fast, but there are people who are not choosing to fast because they don't have food, and to connect it to the situation in Israel, I mean, thank God famines aren't happening yet, but I don't know how many people you've seen in Israel who are posting about how there's just no food on the shelves anymore, and so and there, I know that there are organizations also that are bringing food to the soldiers, right? So putting yourself in a state of hunger causes you, it highlights with a big highlighter your egotistical focus on your own needs, and hopefully makes you realize, oh, I'm only focusing on my own needs. Other people have needs, and that's the reason why I'm fasting. If I fast and I don't focus on the fact that other people have needs that I should be doing tzedakah for, then my fast is worthless. So I think that's a fifth idea. Okay, I'm glad you asked that question. It's a good review.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Good Q&A. Have a good day, everybody,
Thank you.
and a good fast. A fast that God listens to. Have that kind of fast.